3.
Hi, welcome to my series of classroom hints. Today's session is on how to get the most out of each lesson. Sometimes you can sit through a lesson and it all ends up blah blah blah, and you walk out at the end of the lesson and you don't really know what really happened or didn't understand. A number of years ago we had a student here with the name of Daniel. Daniel was a national swimmer, top 10, and boy oh boy, you've got to take your hat off to those swimmers. Their training regime, up in the mornings in the gym or the pool, afternoon maybe swim 100 laps. Daniel Friday night had to swim the school carnival. Because he was a national swimmer, he had to find two carnivals to swim on the Saturday, and then he had to find one to swim on the Sunday to swim tide to increase his base stamina level. Then the week starts again, and I said to Daniel, how on earth do you keep up with your schoolwork? And he said, yeah, well, don't have a lot of time, but what I do is when I'm in class, I'm in class. I listen, really listen to what's being said, and try to absorb what's going on. If I'm not sure, put up my hand, ask the question straight away, and when I'm packing up at the end of the lesson, I make sure that I'm not thinking about rushing out the morning tea or lunch or after school training. Packing up, thinking about was there anything in that lesson that I didn't understand, and if there was, don't leave the room. Door stopper, you'll see it shortly. Wheel around, don't go through the door, and come and ask the teacher, and sometimes you can just fix it up in a minute or two. So this started me off on a series. I blended these in with some of my own classroom hints. So the very first hint, so hint number 1, listen, really listen like you're listening to your favourite song or TV show. Daniel said he's like a wicketkeeper or baseball catcher. You know, don't let anything get past you without knowing what it means. Try to work out why the teacher has used certain words. I mean, teachers do go to some trouble to try and present the information in the most simple form they can. So try and listen to the wording and the sentences that they put together. Also, I'll talk more about this later, diminished responsibility. When you're part of a group, you don't feel a personal responsibility to the teacher. And I'll talk more about that shortly, but basically, when you're part of a group, you might be looking out the window, digging your mate in the ribs, or not listening, doing something else, you know, looking at your calculator. And whereas if there's one person in the room, you probably wouldn't be doing that. You have a personal responsibility to eyeball the teacher and to keep focused. You must, I suppose what I'm saying here is you must be an active listener. So what we're saying, hint number 1, listen like you're listening to your favourite song or TV show. If someone was talking during your favourite song or TV show, you'd soon tell them to be quiet. And that's the focus or the intensity that you need to have. Hint number 2 was must ask questions. Don't ever think that you're the only person in the room who doesn't understand what's being said or explained. There'll be others in the room that won't understand what's going on. Not going to put up their hand, maybe you can take the lead, or maybe get some of your mates to share this, you know, give each other a little bit of a look across the room and shake and saying, I don't understand it, someone put up their hand, so it's not always the same person. Very important, you must also listen to questions that other students ask, and I didn't realise this until a mate and I, in a country town, we were driving to the university in the main city over a number of years, finishing off our degree. And we'd force ourselves to talk about the work driving home. It was about an hour and a half trip each way. And I found out that this mate of mine seemed to drag or absorb a lot more out of the lecture than what I did. He came from a scientific background and I came from a business or commercial background. And the subjects we were doing, he was able to absorb more or linked up with previous information learned. So really listen to the questions that other students ask and also listen to the answers. If you're really listening, you know, really focused, and you're asking questions, you will increase your understanding of a topic. And the little example that I use is if someone explained to you quickly how a combustion engine worked, then you might remember enough little details here and there to pass some sort of exam on it, but you'd soon forget it. Whereas if you saw one working, or saw one with a glass panel on the side and the pistons going up and down, you know, and the power stroke and firing stroke, etc., or you pulled one apart, then you'd really understand it and you would remember it for the rest of your life. So if you really understand something, that it produces a long-term memory and it really doesn't fade away. Just on this point of deep understanding, I'd call it, just going back, talking about understanding the topic. So you must pursue deep understanding, not a shallow understanding. I've just given these two little examples here. Like teachers, when they mark papers, often come across just ridiculous answers that show that the students only have a shallow understanding of the topic and not a deep understanding. So just a couple of these. Like in a first aid exam, one of the lads was describing the body's circulation of blood, and one of his points he was making, he said that the blood flowed down one leg and up the other. Well, that of course shows a very shallow understanding of the circulation. Another one in a history exam, the student said, oh, the Roman Empire was going downhill, so they decided to fix up the roads. Just unfortunately used the word downhill and also to fix up the roads. Maybe in today's circumstances, in a capitalist society, if the government decided to spend money on roads, it may be a stimulus package, but I think with the Romans using slaves, it probably wouldn't be. But we come across this all the time. They're called student howlers, when students write something really ridiculous in an exam paper, and it shows very shallow understanding and not a deep understanding of the topic. Hint number 3 that Daniel spoke about was the door stopper. At the end of the lesson, packing up your books, just have a quick think, was there anything during the lesson that I didn't understand? Yes, there was. Door stopper, don't leave the room, wheel around, ask the teacher, and sometimes it can be fixed up in a minute or two. If it's a bigger problem, if it's a deeper problem, the teacher might say, well, look, you better come and see me at lunchtime or after school, or come along to one of my tutorials to sort it out. Hint number 4, must do homework. Now, homework is independent practice. Excuse me. Now, in the class, the teacher knows that the students are divided up probably in equal proportion, a third of each. There's the auditory learners, there's the visual learners that need to see something, and there's the kinesthetic or hands-on learners. Now, the young ladies are probably better at sitting and listening than what guys are. Because of maturity level, we catch up a little bit later. But the teacher will, in introducing the topic, they'll tell you about the topic, so the auditory learners start to process the information. Then they might rule off on the board or the screen and say, here's a demonstration of one, so there might be the example on the board, the map or the maths problem or science problem or whatever. And that's good for the visual learners. They'll see what's happening there. And then after they've ruled off and done the demonstration or example, over on this side of the board they say, right, let's pick on the first example and you get started. I'll give you a few minutes start and I'll put a few things up on the board. Have a look at your mate's work if you're a little bit stuck. But this is called guided practice. So guided practice is when the teacher and the students do one together, helping each other, and it's good for the hands-on learners, the kinesthetic learners. So the teacher tells you about it, explains it, then does a demonstration, then guided practice for the hands-on learners. So you listen, then you watch, and you do. So you need to go through these 3. That's the way that humans learn. But independent practice is when you get home on your own, and that's when you find out whether you really understand the topic or not. It's a little bit like the mouse at one end of the maze and the food down the other. The mouse tries this way, tries that way, tries that, tries all sorts of different ways until all the box canyons and the blocks finally get there. If you don't try this at home and you don't do your homework or you don't attempt to do your homework, so when you get into the exam, you might be quite good at the topic, you might be quite good at that subject. But if there's a tricky exam question there and you haven't been, like the mouse, you haven't tried this, tried that, and worked out what doesn't work, then even though you might be accomplished at the topic, you may not complete the exam in the time that's set. So, must do homework because it's your independent practice. Now, I'm a great believer in starting summaries early. Now, each of us has a partially photographic memory. I mean, we can all shut our eyes, remember what our house looks like, our members of our family, any pets. So we all are gifted with partially photographic memory. I've met two people in my life with total recall or photographic memory. One I went to school with. We used to sit on the bus and go to school, about an hour and a half drive in the morning with the bus. And he could, in the exam, he could just shut his eyes and read the answer off the page. He was also good at problem solving, so he had it all, this guy. Ended up going on to the family farm, and but another guy I met that was photographic was also a well-to-do farmer in a neighbouring valley. I grew up in one valley, and this was a potato farm in another valley that was doing very well. So I have another session that I'll be uploading called Painless Learning, and it's how to take advantage of our partially photographic memory. Don't leave things to the last minute, trying to cram it in the night before or the day before. That's what I call painful learning, whereas the little technique that I've worked out here called painless learning is to take advantage of the partially photographic memory. Now, I'll just back off that one for the moment. Now, they were my hints for quite a while, until one day I was teaching some young lads topic of insurance. One guy at the end of the lesson said, "Sir, I didn't really understand it. Is there a chance of having a tutorial?" I said, "Well, the only time I'm free is lunchtime today." So we got back in the room, he sat there, I went through it about half the time, and he said, "Yeah, thanks, sir, I understand that now." And I said, "Well, mate, how come you understand it now? Whereas the same sort of stuff was said before. It's not tricky maths, there was no hard concepts." He said, "I don't know," and I didn't know either, but I thought about it later. And it's what I call diminished responsibility. When you're in class, and I mentioned this earlier in this upload, that when there's 25 of you in the room, you don't have that personal responsibility towards the teacher. You might be looking out the window, as I said before, digging your mate in the ribs, or just playing with your calculator or doing something, or pretending that you are listening but you're really not. So I said, righto, thinking to myself, this diminished responsibility. Now, when I went to school, I was the only kid in grade 11 and 12 in the accounting class, and you ever think that I turned up without my homework done, or without sitting in class, poking myself in the ribs or looking out the window? I didn't, because I was one-on-one, personal responsibility to the teacher to listen. It was probably the best marks I ever got because of that direct one-on-one focus. So what you need to do is pretend you're the only person in the class. So it's all for you. It's not like a cake. If I brought in a cake, 25 people in the room, I'd probably have to cut it into 26 pieces, one for myself and one for everyone else. You don't have to share it. If it's knowledge, you take it all for yourself. Like if I had 25 people in the room and I came in and said, "Here's a hint on the exam, there's 25-word hint, sorry, you can only have one word each." Well, that's ridiculous. You can have the whole lot to yourself. So pretend you're the only person in class. You don't have to share the words and the knowledge. It's not like the cake. Be as greedy, take it all for yourself, and as I was saying, I was the only kid in the accounting class. So, summary of my hints, pretend you're the only one in the class, so I moved that up to number 1, really important. Pretend you're the only one in the class, 100% ownership. Listen like you listen to your favourite song. Someone interrupted you, you'd soon sort it out. Ask questions, these help your deep understanding. Don't leave the room, doorstopper, don't leave the room not knowing what the topic is about. Must do homework, because that is your independent practice. That's where you really find out whether you understand the topic or not. and start summaries early. And I'll talk more about that in my other upload on painless learning. Look, I hope this has been of some help to you. If it has, please visit my website by the name of Mr D's Classroom Hints. In it, there's an overview of my book. You can have a look at the contents pages and see what topics are covered. There's video links to my other uploads. There's also other useful websites on literacy, numeracy, bullying, health and diet, all sorts of things. Where to find help if you're feeling depressed or down. So I hope this has been of some help, and if it has, please have a look at my other uploads on varying topics. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye-bye.